I feel like being a twin parent is like the boot camp of parenting. And, I feel like I'm through like the more intense stages earlier on. And I feel like I can do anything now. I survived that twin infancy experience. So I feel like I'm definitely stronger for it. But yeah, felt like it almost broke me.
Hello, and welcome to the Twin Mom Life Podcast. I'm your host, Jess. I created this podcast to help build community, connection, and most importantly, friendships among moms of multiples. Being a twin mom can be amazing and magical. That twin bond is unlike anything I've ever witnessed. But it can also be isolating and overwhelming. I'll be chatting with other twin moms, diving deep into the twin experience, giving advice on what works for us so you don't have to learn the hard way. Juggling two babies at the same time is challenging, but I'm confident we can learn from each other and figure out how to raise these babies together. Hi, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Ellen. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm so excited to do this.
Me too. And we're in person. I haven't done an in-person interview in a long time, so I'm so excited to have you
Yeah.
physically here. Welcome to my house.
Thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful and peaceful out here and no kids running around at present. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, thanks for coming out. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm also local to the Austin area. I have fraternal boy girl twins who are 5 years old at present. They're my only kids. I am divorced. So, single parenting, splitting custody with their dad. And I work as a individual psychotherapist. And yeah, there's a whole lot more to get into with the twin experience. So yeah, just looking forward. I wish I had this podcast to listen to when I was really struggling in the earlier stages.
Mm, yeah, I feel you on that. I'm thankful you're here and I'm thankful to talk about all the good stuff because I feel like you have a lot of experiences that are unique and I'm excited to dive into it. But
Yeah.
before we do, can you tell us how you filled your cup today or if you have plans to do so?
Yes. Today's a good day in my life for cup filling because it's a Monday as we're recording this, and I have Mondays off from work, which was an adjustment that I made to kind of give myself a day. And I also just wanted to mention how just integral it is to fill one's cup as a twin mom. I mean, it's about survival. It's I had to learn that I needed to be more protective of my own needs in order to be a more effective mom. And so I'm doing a lot more, just kind of day to day, being mindful of what my needs are. I went and picked up a coffee for myself today.
Yay.
Yes, I'm currently pregnant as a surrogate, for a couple that I know, and going into this pregnancy, I'm just more aware of what my needs are. I think I have to be with my twins, and, I don't have the luxury of just resting when I wanna rest all the time, so I got, like, a pregnancy support belt because I have some SI joint discomfort,
Mm,
so it's just nice to be able to be aware of, "Oh," because in my twin pregnancy, I was like, "I'm uncomfortable. I think that's just how it is, though."
hmm But
Um,
doing stuff like that, early to make sure that
yeah.
you're physically comfortable. There's no need to be
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, because 'cause I'm just 15 weeks now, so it's relatively early in the process, but, yeah, it's, one baby though, so very different from twin pregnancy. All you
Yes.
pregnant twin moms, it's really rough. Uh, yeah.
It's rough, but it's temporary.
Yes.
You can do it, but yeah, it's so hard. I know I've joked about this before, and this isn't a joke. This is true that I did schedule my husband's vasectomy while I was pregnant
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
just was couldn't physically do it again. So I'm
right.
impressed and just how amazing to be able to offer, to be able to be a surrogate for somebody going through infertility struggles. It's really special and incredible. And I'm just really impressed that you did it after a twin pregnancy. So it's just so unbelievably kind and generous and amazing.
Yeah, it's a pretty meaningful experience. I really appreciate getting to offer this service, and it's something that they've really struggled with. People that I knew, I wouldn't have necessarily pursued this just on my own. But yeah, it was nice to get to kind of be a part of that in their life and help to um, help them to accomplish something that they've really struggled with for a long time.
Mhm. And can you tell us about your twin pregnancy and
Yeah,
delivery?
yeah, absolutely. So, gosh, it's. I mean, I could have. There could be a whole episode on just the pregnancy, on just the delivery,
Yes.
all of it. But so my mom had home births with her 3 children, and I always, kind of expected to do the same. So when I found out I was pregnant, I found a midwife, and actually this was around COVID time because my babies were born in January 2021. So we had to totally rearrange our wedding plans because of
Mm.
COVID.
Mhm. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Luckily, it was just gonna be a small family wedding anyways, but still definitely, inconveniencing. And then we ended up getting married with the justice of the peace in April 2020, and then I was pregnant in May 2020. And so anyways, I had only, I think, done one in-person visit with the midwife because otherwise it was virtual. And we did listen to the heartbeat with the Doppler, but I didn't have an early ultrasound. So looking back, she found the heartbeat and then, the baby moved and she lost it and she moved the Doppler and then she found the heartbeat again. And I wonder if that was the same baby or if she picked up on the other
Mm.
baby.
Mhm.
But anyways, it wasn't evident that I was having twins until the anatomy scan. So we had decided that we did not want to find out the sex of the baby. But the day before the anatomy scan, I had said to my husband at the time, I think if it's twins, I do want to know the sex. And,
What made you say that?
I
Like you had some kind of inkling or something?
well, I mean, yes and no. I was still shocked when I found out, but I started to show a little sooner on. My weight gain was a little faster. I was reading up on week to week what to expect.
Mhm.
Um, so I had an inkling that maybe I could be having twins, and the fact that I had not actually seen what's happening inside.
Sure.
You
Right.
never know, prepare for different possibilities. So, but when I said that to the ultrasound tech, and of course it's just me in the room. My husband at the time was on FaceTime. She's like, "No one said that before," but kind of opened up with, "Well, if it's twins." And so when she started doing the ultrasound, she said, "How did you know?" And I was like, "How did I know what?" And she's like, "That you're having 2." And I was
Oh
like,
my
"You're
gosh.
joking, right? Like, this isn't real?" And no, she's like, "Yeah, there's 2 babies." And I was just, like, blown away. And the first day, I was so excited and thrilled. And then the next day, I was terrified.
Sure, like the reality
Yes,
kicks in.
kicked
Yeah.
in, yeah.
Yeah.
But at first, I mean, I've always wanted to be a mom. I've always wanted 2 to 4 kids. This is my first pregnancy, so it was like 2 right off the bat.
Yeah.
Whenever I used to play the game, Life, and I landed on the twin spot, that was, like, my favorite spot,
Oh my gosh,
so
that's so
I
funny. I
was
love
like,
that.
"Oh, this is gonna be great." And so I found out the first baby A was a boy, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, I wanted a boy. I'm one of 3 girls, but, of course, having boy-girl is ideal. I really wanted to get to experience having a boy and a girl, and so that was really cool to find out. But yeah, a lot to take in all at once.
Well, especially at 20 weeks,
Yeah.
you're like, at least I feel like the majority of people probably find out
Yes.
earlier and then you can kind of come to
Wrap
terms
your
and
mind.
figure out the logistics and plan.
Right.
So halfway through, you're like, whoa. And then it
Yeah.
probably changed things like, okay, now you're thinking about delivery
Absolutely. Yeah.
and what does that mean?
Yeah. So the midwife that I was working with wasn't comfortable with the home birth with the first time mom with twins,
Hmm.
and so I realized too that hospital birth would just probably be the best outcome with all of the different things that can happen with twin birth. And so I had to really just kinda, yeah, do a mental 180, with my plans. I'd never been hospitalized. I was terrified about the idea of being in a hospital, but I really and you have to prepare yourself for so many different possible outcomes.
Mhm.
But I ended up deciding that I wanted to have the most natural birth possible. And a lot of that was up to chance, of course. My OB was comfortable with vaginal delivery as long as baby A was head down,
Mhm.
which is the case for a lot of them. And babies flip flopped throughout the pregnancy. So I was like, oh, I don't know. How
That's hard when your plans are like, ugh, like
uh-huh.
up and down and yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
My labor started, well, so at 36 plus 3, I noticed what might be amniotic fluid.
Hmm.
I was thinking, oh, this could be like a slow leak situation. I didn't want to go to the hospital right away because I didn't want to be induced if I didn't have to be. So, but by that evening, I had actually consulted with the midwife, and she gave me a test strip, and it showed that it was negative. But by that evening, she was like, it'd probably be a good idea to just call the OB. And of course, they told me right away, go to the hospital. So we did. So they admitted me. They did a check, and they verified that it was in fact amniotic fluid.
Okay, like a
They,
slow leak.
a slow
It's
leak.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they admitted me and allowed just time. I mean, they did a lot of it, set up the IV, and they did the ultrasound, and they confirmed baby A was head down. I think they were both head down at admission. I was 0 centimeters dilated. This is about we went to the hospital about 9:30 p.m. And so they just kinda left me alone after they got me admitted and established to see if things progressed naturally. And at 1:30 in the morning, I was laying in the hospital bed, and I actually, intentionally was just laying there like, "Okay, let me just, like, decompress from my stress of being in the hospital." I was, like, trembling and just, like, letting my body, like, "Okay, it's gonna be okay.
Mhm.
Let me just, like, feel this, this fear and let it, like, wash over me." And that's when my water broke.
That's
When
wild.
Yeah, so I think my son kicked, 'cause, like, it felt like a kick that kinda, like, burst, and right away, my contractions started. I called the doula. I could only have my like, 1 person plus, like, a support, like a doula, in the
Okay.
room,
Okay.
COVID time. We had to do COVID tests in the hospital. And fortunately, the doula was helpful in that she recognized that my labor was progressing quicker than they
Hmm.
would have realized. It hadn't been, too long, maybe a couple of hours. I got up to use the bathroom, and she's like, "Are you having the urge to push?" And I was like, "Yeah, I now that you mention it, I think that's what I'm feeling." And so she alerted the nurse. She's like, "Hey, like, I think you need to
It's
check."
go time.
And I was 10 centimeters dilated, like
Oh,
0
wow.
centimeters at admission.
They don't
And
take
then
first-time moms as seriously with that, like, with
yeah,
how quickly labor can actually progress.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, I've heard of stories of, "Oh, I was in labor for 36 hours." I'm like,
Sure,
"Oh."
sure, and you're like, this was a couple hours," and to go from
Yeah.
0 to 10
Mhm.
in what, like, how many hours would you say?
I mean, I hadn't even started labor when I got in, so it's kinda hard to say where I was at 1:30 when my water broke versus they probably checked me around 10 or 11 PM. I wasn't looking at the clock very
Sure,
much throughout the
sure.
process, but certainly probably like 8 hours or less, something like that. And so they wheeled me into the operating room because that's where twin moms deliver. Oh, yeah, and I also wanted to mention that, I was highly encouraged to get an epidural because, the risk of not getting an epidural, if you did have to have a C-section, then they'd have to put you under. And I realized that I was okay with taking that risk if it meant the likelihood or possibility of having a natural vaginal birth. And so I opted not to get the epidural and was just hoping that everything would go smoothly. And the birth was fortunately for me, the smoothest part of the twin experience. Postpartum was super rough. Pregnancy was real rough on my body, especially towards the end. But the birth, I was preparing myself for the worst pain imaginable. And it wasn't that bad in my experience, so fortunately, that was, the
That's
easy part.
incredible, and what an amazing, brave decision to make, especially being a first-time mom and not really having, like, a reference point. I think that's
Mhm,
impressive to make that decision that you wanted to do it unmedicated without having experienced that and with twins.
mhm,
So, I think that's
yeah.
pretty incredible.
have had high standards for myself for much of the twin mom experience, as we'll probably get into some more. So, but yeah, I mean, I am really glad that everything was able to unfold smoothly. A
How
lot of
many
that's luck.
minutes apart are they?
8 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my boys are 7,
Oh,
so
wow.
we're
Okay.
close.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, my son was born. They put him on my chest, and they took him off for me. I didn't have to.
Yeah,
I remember
that's so
distinctly.
good.
So yeah, they were like, "Okay, yeah, I know you need to focus now
Yes.
on the next one." Although I remember I was trying to soothe him as I was like pushing her out. I was like,
Aw,
it's okay, she's
that's so
crying over
sweet.
there."
Like, your motherly instincts, like, came over immediately. That's really, really sweet.
Yeah, although at the same time, I'm like, it like, you should just it's fine, like, they cry. I had to learn to be comfortable with, like, okay, just because they're crying doesn't mean you need to, like, help them stop crying that moment.
It's hard, though. I
Oh,
really
yeah.
struggled that with my daughter, and I had never heard the term "purple crying." Have you heard that? It's basically
No.
like they're just crying. Like, nothing they're not hungry. Their diaper is checked or, like, their diaper has been cleaned. There's
Uh-huh.
literally nothing wrong other than sometimes babies cry, like the witching hour,
Yeah,
and I had never heard that term, and yeah, so
I'll have to look into it. I don't think I believe in that because I think there's so many things we don't know, I'm overstimulated, I'm understimulated,
sure,
my
sure.
stomach's uncomfortable, it doesn't mean that there's always intervention needed still, but, yeah. Which I think has been challenging for my mothering journey as I'm like, "Oh, something I need to figure this out." But so they were born at like 6 in the morning, both about 6 pounds. I did see the placentas, that was really cool. Um,
Oh, I'm glad.
yeah. And so I was up all night, and then just immediately this postpartum anxiety kicked in where
Mm,
people had told me, "Take advantage of the hospital resources that they'll look after your babies for you. You can rest." And I was just like, "No, I need to have eyes on my babies at all times and make sure everything's okay." And so I did not get a minute of sleep that next night. And so it was a really rude awakening for me. I was in the hospital, like, actively hallucinating,
mm.
for sleep deprivation, so really jumped into the deep end on that.
Well, and you started off sleep deprived because you labored all night.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like you get great sleep while you're pregnant either,
Sure,
towards the end.
sure.
But, yeah, I, was really wrestling with myself. This is the beginning of my journey of figuring out I need to take care of myself, in order to be able to take care of my babies, more effectively. But, yeah, I remember that trying to talk to the nurse, like, "What how do I do this? What do I
Mm,
how can I, like, keep myself functional here?" Also, they started, me pumping from the start of their birth, and we tried latching them for breastfeeding. My daughter just caught on pretty quickly. She was natural with the breastfeeding, and my son had a slight tongue tie, and different professionals would come in and say, like, "Oh, hi, I'm the surgeon. We can do this pretty quick and easy." And then let's do it while you're here. And then the lactation consultant would come in and say, "I don't think it's really necessary. I think
hmm.
he's doing okay." So a lot of I found the hospital stay really overwhelming. They handed me a questionnaire like, "Do you think you're experiencing postpartum depression?" I'm like, "What? I can't even think straight."
Oh, there's so much happening.
Yeah. Checking on you, every couple hours, and so much support, and it's really helpful. But so I was starting pumping every 3 hours. They kinda helped me to start getting into that, try latching my son. My son ended up having jaundice, and so he was really sleepy, and, for them to be born, I think it's technically late preterm at 36 weeks and 4 days. They're still, underdeveloped. That was something I hadn't really prepared myself for going into the twin experience, how most twin babies fortunately, we didn't need NICU time. They weren't technically premature, but, a few more weeks in utero, I think, would have made a big difference with their digestive systems, and
Mhm,
so he was really sleepy with the jaundice, and, the way to treat that is to make sure they get more and more milk to kind of flush it out,
mhm.
and, we didn't end up having to use the light treatment, but
Okay.
we started him on bottles, and he just took to that a lot more readily. And so I ended up breastfeeding my daughter and pumping for my son. and did that for 2.5 years. So it was a whole journey.
I bet. Well, okay, and I absolutely can't wait to dive into that.
Yeah.
Before we do, I have questions about the hospital
Sure.
because I feel like I don't think I've talked about this either, but I feel like we experienced a very similar hospital stay with our twins
Uh-huh.
where we were almost to the point, like we were at the point where my husband said, I cannot drive home. I physically do not feel comfortable
Mhm.
driving my wife and my two babies home because I am
Uh,
so sleep deprived.
oh gosh.
So we were offered help with our daughter that we did not accept.
Uh-huh,
Okay.
uh-huh,
And then with the twins, we were not offered help. Like, don't get me wrong, the nurses were great, but it
uh-huh,
wasn't like anyone was saying, would you like us to take your babies to the quote unquote nursery
uh-huh.
and let you sleep for an hour or what it might be?
Yeah.
So, I think we were in the hospital for 4 or 5 days.
Mhm.
And the last day, they had to do a car seat test. I'm not
Yep,
sure. Okay, so
yep.
ours had to do that because they're under a certain weight, and it was 90 minutes. So we were
Right?
like, "Can you do the car seat test in a different room at the same time so we can have
Yeah.
90 minutes uninterrupted so we
Mhm,
can try to sleep?"
mhm,
That was the only time that we
mhm.
slept in the hospital.
Yeah.
Because it's like, like you said, people are coming in, they're doing vitals on you
Right?
and your two babies. And we were constantly getting glucose checks or probably checking bilirubin.
Mhm.
And people are coming in to do hearing tests and eye tests and
Yep.
all of the
Mhm.
things. And it was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever talked with anyone
Mm.
about how overwhelming the hospital stay was
Yeah. Yeah.
with twins. So, how did you guys deal with that?
I mean, honestly, I it's so hard to think back to that time.
Like, do you even remember?
I feel like when people ask you, your question made me think of what people ask, like, "How do you do it?" And the only answer I can think is you just do,
You
like,
just
you
do.
just do. I mean, we just had like, we were in survival mode from the start, and it just compounded from there. I mean,
Mhm.
like, we were fresh into it at that point, right? And then you add on months and, days and weeks and months. Fortunately, my parents lived out of state, and my mom was able to come and stay with us. So she was at our house waiting when we got home from the hospital.
That's amazing.
Yes, and it was so integral. My husband at the time wasn't able to take much time off work postpartum, but I had my other, parental figure there to go through it because it really, I mean, you I feel like 3 adults per baby would be a right kind of number, and with twins, it's just, there's so many hands necessary. I can't even, just we have these papers that shows, like, the time and the which baby that was fed, which baby's diaper was changed because you cannot mentally keep track of it all,
Oh, yeah, no
and if
way.
I see those papers now, I'm just like, it's a visceral reaction of like,
Like
"Oh, no, no."
PTSD.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Uh,
I do agree though, when we got home, we
mm,
were still very sleep deprived, but things got easier. And then you have separate spaces where you're like, I need to go lay down for 30 minutes
mhm.
while someone else where like you don't have like the gift of space in the hospital, right? Like you're
Yeah,
in
yeah.
one room and
Mhm.
they're like, you can't, there's no getting out of that. So we couldn't wait to get home to see our daughter and to be with family. And yes, so
Yeah,
we had a
yeah.
similar, very overwhelming experience
Mhm,
in the
mhm.
hospital
Yeah.
afterwards. So,
But then, gosh, I remember early days, we had to go to the pediatrician, like, the day after we were released from the hospital, and then I had to go again because of the jaundice, so there was, yeah, I felt like you're just kinda kicked into, "This is your twin parenting life now, sink or swim," you know? But one thing I wanted to say is that when I learned I was pregnant with twins, so I have an aunt who has boy-girl twins,
okay.
it wasn't the genetic link there 'cause she had fertility support, in that process, but, when I talked to her about it, shared that I was pregnant with twins, she said, "People might say it's twice as hard. It's actually more than twice as hard as having a singleton." I was like, "I'm sure you're exaggerating. Like, how can that be? That doesn't make sense." But it really, I believe it now.
Mhm. Twin mom math. It's not
Uh-huh.
just double. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And the mom guilt of I cannot give one baby my full I
Mm,
never got to have that,
yeah.
twins being my first. When I was pregnant and telling people that I was having twins, and they'd say, "Oh, are these your first babies?" And they would say, "Oh, well, at least that's all you know." And in my mind, that was a disadvantage because I did not know how to be a parent to one baby, let alone two, and it was just such a steep learning curve. I wish I had done more to prepare, but at the same time, there's just no preparing for it. But a couple things that come to mind are learning how to use the breast pump before the babies
Mhm.
come, because I was just like, "Oh, yeah, there it is in the box, I'll figure it out."
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and, like, I was of course, I didn't wanna actually pump to induce labor or anything, but, like, turn it on, like, see how it
Sure.
works, test the
Know how
levels.
yes, know how to, like, how does this all fit together? There are 15
Uh-huh.
pieces,
Yes.
and does it work? Plug it in. Like, all yes, I
Right.
all of those
Yeah.
checks.
Does it fit my nipples? Like, there's
Sure.
a lot of things that you don't know to look at. And then also for me, learning how to swaddle, that was something that, like, if I had practiced more, I think I would have been able to do it more readily, 'cause on a live squirmy baby, it's like, "Oh gosh, like, how do you do
Mhm.
this?"
Yes.
Felt like such an amateur, parent, but, yeah.
I totally agree with all that, and I feel, having a singleton first, it did make having twins next. I never wanna say easy, but
Mhm.
I had perspective where certain things I did know how to do. I've changed
Mhm.
hundreds of diapers. I've swaddled. I
Yeah.
have, breastfed with this baby, and pumping was a whole new experience. But,
Mhm.
I had
Mhm.
lots of practice, so to speak. So I feel like it
Right.
came slightly more naturally, where I know we've talked about this, like, motherhood with my daughter was very challenging. There were lots
Mhm.
of things that did not come naturally.
Yeah.
And I feel like having that experience with twins would have been very, very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So,
But you also had a toddler when the twins came, so, I can't imagine that aspect too. But yeah,
we have a
it was
lot
a
of
lot
help.
to take
Still to
care
this
of.
day, we
Yes.
have a lot of help, and I'm
Take all
so
the help
thankful.
you
Yes.
can
Mhm.
access. Yeah, that was really challenging for me, and I think it was helpful to realize that just this sense of, like, a village is just not accessible or available in our society. And on top of that, not having a cohesive sense of how we parent our children, and there being it's
Mm,
so overwhelming, all the different, I mean, I think it's beautiful that there's a lot of different ideas about, this is important or, do it this way, but it also, I think, contributes to this sense of, feeling of isolation, and it was helpful for me to realize that it wasn't just me, it was also just the way society is set up that made it so hard,
mhm.
to go through that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big thing too. Like, I'm so thankful for the internet and social media, and it can
Mhm.
also be really overwhelming to be
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh." I feel like I was talking to my mother-in-law about, like, "Oh, we're gonna do baby-led weaning." And she was like, "What the heck is that?" Like,
Mhm.
she maybe had heard of that idea, or, that
Yeah.
approach, but didn't
Yeah.
know the name. And, there's all of these things online, and some of
Uh-huh.
them are so
Yeah.
helpful, but it is so overwhelming of,
It's
like,
too
what's
much to
right,
process.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
And, obviously that is something that's new in our generation of parenting. Like, that
Mhm.
didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So it's almost like too much information
Yeah. Yeah.
is circling, and some of it is bad, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
So,
And I also wanna pivot from there and just, speak to another, parallel experience is that I was diagnosed with ADHD, I think when my kids were 2 or 3, which was totally, like, out of left field for me. That never been on my radar. I did well in school, but my sister brought up that, she was diagnosed, and she said that maybe I had it, and I was struggling so much to be I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 3 years, and so another thing that I think society has really helped us to be more aware of with social media and people sharing experiences more broadly, we're much more able to recognize how ADHD presents in females versus
mm,
males, just for me, the sensory overwhelm of the noise from the babies, and the difficulty trying to create a structure. Because there's so many aspects of the ADHD experience, but it was so helpful for me to learn more about myself and what worked for me and what didn't, and also acknowledging the individual differences that can show up in babies, and in just people in general, right? Which shows up in babies. Apparently, according to the internet, about 40% of babies are easy babies, and neither of my babies were. They always were on the low end of the range of sleep. How many hours of
Mm.
sleep should you get at 12 months? It was always like the minimum amount of sleep. And that can make a big difference. Other kids I see, like, at the playground, they can, like, sit at one like, at the, xylophone and just, like, do that activity for, like, a half an hour. My kids are all over the playground all the time. My kids were climbers. My son climbed onto the kitchen table at, like, 12 or 13 months old, and my daughter climbed, like, on the play kitchen over I mean, I'm, like, spotting her. But she just like, how far can she go? She, like, climbed over the counter into the kitchen sink, and like, "Oh my gosh, you go, girl," but also, like, "Stop, please." They both walked at 11 months. Like, I have so I think it's amazing how much they're, like, go-getters, they're fearless, but it's also so challenging as a parent, when your kids are just all over the place, going in different directions. So that was overwhelming.
Well, I'm glad that you looked into that because
Yeah.
it's hard to not be like, why is motherhood so hard for me?
Uh-huh.
And it's because every baby has a very different temperament.
Yeah.
And a friend who might have a quote unquote easy baby who like sleeps through lunch
Mhm.
and you're like, that would never happen in a million years.
Yeah.
So like you guys are having different experiences.
Mhm.
And then that kind of validates what you're going through. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that you were able to look into that and have a perspective
Yeah.
because all of my babies have been very different. Kaya,
Mm.
not an easy baby. She was
Mhm.
so challenging.
Yeah.
And the boys kind of like we always joke they like flip-flopped back and forth, but
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
there were very few times they were hard at the exact same time.
Uh-huh.
Like what it truly would flip-flop where one day I'm like, wow, I'm like baby wearing my son Wyatt all day because he's extra needy and my son Waylon is like sleeping over there peacefully. And I was thankful
Mm.
that
Yeah.
there was a balance there where I can just understand that that isn't always the case.
Mhm.
And that does make things harder. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that you were able to have that perspective of
Mhm.
like you didn't have easy babies. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I know that's just really
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. Thank you. Fortunately, I mean, I feel like things are so smooth at they're 5 years old. I felt like, for me, the infancy, toddlerhood, those I mean, infancy was, for me, by far the hardest stage. Toddlerhood, following, and it's gotten progressively I mean, it really has I in my experience, it has gotten easier. Of course, the challenges are different,
Sure.
but, we're sleeping now, we're in a rhythm. They can talk to me, they can understand me, they have patience, I can put a cake in front of them and they're not gonna touch it. They could buckle themselves into their car seats. There's just so much that has I feel like I can breathe a lot easier. And I think going back to work also really helped me to regain some sense of sanity,
Hmm.
um, because I just really felt like I was drowning in motherhood, and alongside that, my marriage was just not in a good place. That's a subject that I see a lot on like the twin mom groups where marital strain is typical when you're going through the postpartum period, and sometimes it's like it gets harder and you get stronger and the relationship is more solidified, and other times it just kind of contributes to things falling apart. And we really worked at it for a time, but I think that we kind of called it at a good time. We had done couples counseling for a while, but we recognized that we weren't really getting anywhere with it. And now we have such a great co-parenting relationship. It really eased up. As soon as we decided to separate, I felt like some of the pressure was relieved. We weren't
Hmm.
kind of looking to each other to be that partner that we were needing at the time. And so, yeah, things in an ideal situation when I don't know what it's like when the marriage does last and feel supportive, but I imagine that that's just in my experience was kind of an added strain in that period where we're having to navigate that, and it was a really scary time not knowing how the family would adjust to that major transition. And it was really difficult for them transitioning, my daughter especially, transitioning to having, stayed at home with me all day to going to, they went to Montessori daycare, which we just always called school. But, we got through it and they adjusted. And I feel like it was not as bad as I was bracing myself for that transition. And we celebrate holidays all together as a family. So yeah.
It's like you needed that separation to be, like, stronger for your kid,
Right.
so I think
Hmm.
it's so I know that must have been so hard, but
Yeah.
so great to recognize, and it
Yeah.
sounds like it's a really great co-parenting situation now,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. It does feel like, yeah, again, a lot of the pressure was kind of taken off. And I know that it's something that I'm still kind of getting a sense of how it's impacted the kids, and I know it's hard for them going back and forth between households, but I do trust that, what's best for their parents individually is gonna be ultimately best for them. And,
Mhm.
yeah, just kinda making room for that. But they're thriving. They have been, like, in the 90th percentile for height and weight, like, throughout.
And that brings me back to thinking about all the breast milk that you
Oh my
provided them.
gosh. Yeah,
So, I know we took, like, a little tangent, but I would
yeah.
love to talk about that. So, you had a very interesting situation
Yeah,
where you breastfed one twin and
yes.
pumped for another. So, can you
Mhm.
tell us about that?
Yeah, I had hoped that I'd be able to breastfeed both of them, and I really worked at that. Even as we were feeding my son bottles, I would still try and latch him. I remember we'd often like I'd start with trying to breastfeed him, and then it wouldn't be taking, and so we'd feed him bottle, and I kept trying. And at some point, I just kind of came to realize that it just didn't seem. It seemed like a preference for him. It seemed like he just took to bottles, and he didn't. And my son's never been real like snuggly. I'll catch him at a good moment here and there and get some good hugs out of him and cuddles. But yeah, my daughter's always been, like, so physically attached, and she like, my stomach is like her lovey. She puts her hand on my stomach,
Oh,
and,
that's sweet.
that's just, like it is, but it's also like, "Oh, like, my abs separated, it's uncomfortable." Um
That is the most real comment ever.
Yeah, diastasis recti. I had no idea that was a thing. And, yeah, it's, if someone presses on your belly button, it's doesn't feel good.
Mhm, hurts,
But
yeah.
anyways, so I kind of just eased up on, like, the trying to push it with the breastfeeding, and we fell into a rhythm. It was really difficult to try and juggle, like, the breastfeeding with the pumping. And, I would always be worried about, like, "Okay, how long can my daughter breastfeed before I need to stop her from breastfeeding, or just make sure that I had still more left to pump," because I would breastfeed her and then I would pump. I don't even remember, fortunately, all the details of how I navigated that, but I remember it being just, like, this mental strain of, like,
Sure.
because I never like, I fortunately, my supply was, like, just enough. We did some formula here and there to supplement. Maybe I bought, like, 3 cans of formula throughout the whole 2.5 years,
Oh, wow,
or
that's
or
so
year, I
minimal,
guess.
though.
Yeah, and but it was always just enough, and so it was always just kinda like, "Oh, like, are we gonna have enough of breast milk?" 'Cause I that was so important to me to be able to breastfeed as long as it worked out. But the first 18 months, I got up and pumped in the middle of the night for a year and a half, and I was also nursing in the night and bottle feeding in the night, which fortunately my husband at the time was able to help with feeding our son. But, my supply was just higher in the nighttime after some rest. So I really felt like I couldn't give up that middle of the night pump for a while. I was really kind of stubborn about it.
But that's impressive that you did it for so long
Mm,
because I pumped for 7 months and
mhm.
I stopped doing a middle of the night pump at 3 months,
Yeah.
and I noticed a huge drop in supply. Like, I think
Mhm.
I would pump at, like, right before I went to bed, like 10 PM, 11 PM, whatever.
Yeah.
So, like, still late.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't wake up at, 2 or 3 in the morning, and I would skip it and then pump again at 6 or 7 AM.
Yeah.
That I noticed the biggest shift,
Yeah.
and that's when we had to start supplementing with formula because
Mhm.
I was not producing enough anymore to provide for 2.
Yeah.
So, I know it's so hard to continue waking up and doing that in the middle of the night,
Oh, yeah.
but I mean, it's great that you did because that's how you kept your supply up,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Um,
a long time.
it is yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's that time. I just feel like I was on a whole other, like, in a whole other world on a different wavelength, and I remember someone saying to me, like, "You will sleep again." And I was like, "Really? Oh, that's such a relief." Like, I appreciated hearing that because just in that time, I'm like, "What is this existence? This is, you're so, depleted." And, which leading into also we didn't sleep train. We co-slept, we bed shared, and so, my my idea of how I wanted to parent, very kind of like natural, like, let's go back a few hundred years. And there was such a high cost, and that my kids didn't sleep through the night until their teeth had all come in, so like 2.5 years. And I remember just like being on the verge of like, I know why people sleep train, and I feel like maybe I should have been doing that. Like, what? I'm putting myself through such, I experienced postpartum rage, which I had
Mm,
never really had much sense of. But in that time, that those moments, it was always when I was trying to put, um, them to sleep,
mm,
and I realized, like, "Oh, I'm, like, filled with rage because, like, my cup is totally empty, and
mm,
I need to take a little bit better care of my own needs." And so I had to learn over time to be more and more protective because I didn't not like how I felt when I was just in this, like, I remember my first Mother's Day, so they were born in January, a few months later in May, I felt so guilty that all I wanted was for my kids to just sleep.
mm.
Oh, what kind of mother am I?
Sleep
Um,
deprivation is really hard though, and
yeah.
this whole conversation is making me think about nurturing twins. Do you
Mhm.
follow Elena or are you familiar with her work?
Oh, no, I haven't heard of that.
So, she has, like, a village, and it's all, like, co-sleeping,
Mm,
trying to provide breast milk, like, it's all
yeah,
that very more natural approach, and
yeah.
she's so good. She's so good, and it was
Mhm.
so funny in our conversation, postpartum rage got brought up
Yeah,
because that's something that I suffered with my boys
uh-huh.
that I was not expecting. I didn't
Yeah.
have postpartum depression, I had that with my daughter,
Mhm.
and then I think it was really, like, the sleep deprivation where this, like, anger came out,
Yes.
and I was
Yeah.
like it was very shocking to me because it was like, where is
Yeah.
this coming from?
Mhm.
So I also experienced that, and it was
Mhm.
awful because I
Yeah.
had this, like, extreme guilt of, like,
Yeah.
these rage moments,
Mhm.
and luckily, like, I've learned to repair and have
Mhm.
healed from that, but I had this
Yeah.
period in motherhood where I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the kind of mom that I wanna
Yeah.
be, and it was almost felt like I couldn't control it,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I've
yeah.
gotten to a different place now, but
Mhm.
I just completely understand, and it's like a different level of guilt, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I went into motherhood thinking, "I'm never gonna yell at my kids," and of course, if you're calm and thinking like, "What would be ideal?" You're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not gonna yell at my kids," but you get put in that situation where I remember I would go I think, like, in the middle of the night a few times, I, like, went and sat in the car in the garage, and I just, like, made these, like, guttural, like, rage sounds, and my throat hurt afterwards, but I was just like, "Oh, wow, yeah, there was a lot
To
in there."
get that, like, physically get that
Mm.
out.
Yeah, where it's not, like, directed at yelling at my kids.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
like, low frustration tolerance is also, part of the ADHD experience, and that was helpful for me to realize, like, okay, like, I just need to be more proactive about making sure my needs are taken care of. And, I learned, like, it's hard for me to know where my limit is sometimes where unfortunately, I got into a habit of keeping things, like, right up against my limit where I would give
Mhm.
everything to my kids and just, like, leave the bare minimum for myself, and then, I would, like, say something calmly and kindly to them, like, 2, 3 times, and then they would not listen, and I would, like, yell and unleash, like,
Mhm.
this, like, "Ah!" And I was like,
Yes.
"Oh, I didn't even know that was, like, right under the surface."
Right.
So, yeah, I had to learn to be more mindful of like, "Okay, gotta take care of myself before I feel like I'm, like, at my breaking point."
I just feel you so deeply on that. I've had a couple moms on the podcast where they have started out motherhood with this self-care routine, and I'm so impressed because
Mhm.
it took me years
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
there. It really took me until maybe when the boys were, like, 6 months old, where I was like, "Something's gotta give."
Yeah.
Like, I need to have planned self-care
Mhm.
outings or activities where I'm, like, doing weekly yoga. I have,
Mhm.
X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
pre-planned and integrated into my day, week, month,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I am waiting until the point of burnout, and
Mhm.
then I'm literally losing my mind. Like,
Yes. Mhm.
this motherhood is not
It's not
sustainable like
sustainable.
that.
Right.
Mhm.
But
So I had
I
a
yeah.
very similar situation.
Yeah, and, it's a marathon, like, you really and I think that fortunately, I mean, having my currently, like, well-slept mind, I can I can look at it rationally and realize, like, of course, it doesn't it's not reassuring when you're in that space of, like, it is so hard, but realizing that we can be adaptable, we can learn through the experience, just thinking of, like, how uncomfortable it is to transition from, like, being in utero to being, like, in the earthly world, and, it's also a similar experience for, new parents, I think, where it's, like, this whole unfamiliar territory, and you have to adjust, and it takes time, and just giving yourself grace, giving yourself time to you'll get there. It's a matter of, slow change over time, and it gets better. It's such a strange experience. It's such an overwhelming experience of like twin pregnancy is really intense. And then you go right into twin infancy and that's really intense. And then twin toddlerhood. And it's like one thing after the other. And you don't have time to regroup. You
Mhm.
don't have any time to like assess. And I remember being in it and realizing like, oh, like this is not really working very well. Like I didn't know that I wasn't gonna be able to do this the way that I wanted to,
Mm.
but it's such a period of growth, and, it's like that discomfort is sometimes necessary to push yourself through the growth, and just I think having compassion towards yourself is such an important thing to
Mm.
integrate or to build over time and realizing that it's not that you're deficient, it's that this is hard.
Mhm.
It feels hard because it is hard, and just feeling like you can figure it out as you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was all really good. Like, it's just so true.
Ugh,
Like, I have learned so much about myself through motherhood.
yes.
I think that's been yeah, when I was having the moments of rage and who am I
Mhm.
really had to, like, look inward to be like, let's
Yeah.
figure out how to fix this and grow. And it
Mhm.
was like a big period of growing. And I like how you said, like, yes, this is your infant's first time in the world. And like,
Mhm.
this is our first time experiencing motherhood.
Right.
And even though I had experienced motherhood with one, well, this is my first time experiencing it with three. And
Yes. Mhm.
that did change how I was able to manage things.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that was really good.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, it's a roller coaster and it can feel so overwhelming and daunting when you're in it. And I feel like I'm still like processing, which I think listening to your podcast at this stage has been helpful because I have a more clear mind, and I can reflect and kind of continue to heal through that. As a therapist, I've always valued, inner growth and reflection. And I think that the more parents are able to challenge themselves to grow, the better off their kids will be for it.
Mm,
And my mother-in-law, or my kids' father's mother, I would say, kids drag you kicking and screaming to change, or they make you, they illuminate aspects of yourself that may need some attention. And the more you're able to see that and to delve into it, and give yourself time to grow and heal and reflect, just I think the better off the whole family system is. And it's not an easy process, but it was so helpful for me to realize that there's right way to no one right way to be a parent, to be a mom. In many ways, I can reflect positively on the standards and what I was able to accomplish, the standards I had, but I also could see them as like holding me back, because I was trying to be a perfectionist. I was trying to, feel like I had little room for adjusting, to, hey, the circumstances really aren't conducive for this being sustainable. And, but it's all part of the growth and learning experience. And like you said, having those repair moments and
mhm,
helping kids realize, like, mommy's still learning too.
mhm.
And I'm gonna keep working on it. And it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing, like, when like you said, when you notice that something you're doing is not how you wanted your motherhood journey to look like, then
Mhm.
to be able to look inward and learn from that, grow from that, and
Yeah.
pivot. And sometimes
Right.
that takes like, I feel like with some things, with the having my twins, I was so easy to pivot
Yeah.
because and then other things were harder and unexpected. Like,
Mhm.
I did not experience postpartum rage with my daughter. Like I
Mhm.
said, I had postpartum depression, which was a different story of its own.
Yeah.
But the rage was, like, so unexpected and came with another level of guilt that I really hadn't experienced in motherhood yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, going through that and coming out on the other side, I'm not perfect,
Mhm.
but it's a huge improvement from what it was.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm thankful all of that happened because I am a stronger, better mom for it.
Mhm.
And I definitely learned a lot about myself. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how can I help 3 little people regulate themselves if I don't know how to do that?"
Right.
So I feel like I really learned a lot of, like, self-regulation tools where it's so cute. The kids now are like, "Should we all take a deep breath together?"
Mhm.
I'm like, "Absolutely. And then we should go outside and touch our feet in the grass, and what does that feel like, and what do you smell, and what do you hear?" And so all of these, like, techniques have helped me and my
Mhm.
kids, so
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. We were watching a movie, I think it was, one of the Despicable Me movies, and my daughter just commented, like, "He's being really mean because he's, like" I forget what it was, if he was, like, he was upset about something, right? And she's like I was like, "Oh, like, I that's so cool that you can see that, right? Like, that
yes.
this behavior is happening because there's underlying things, like, contributing to, um, yeah, just not having the healthiest behaviors, being able to really yeah, dive in. I feel like being a twin parent is like the boot camp of parenting. And, I came out on the other I mean, we're still early in the process. Like they're gonna be 10, 15, 20. But I feel like I'm through like the more intense stages earlier on and able to be like I feel like I can do anything now. I survived that twin infancy experience, and so I feel like I'm definitely stronger for it. But yeah, felt like it almost broke me.
There's a video I posted a while ago, and it's like when you're having a hard time and then you remember that you birthed and are taking care of 2 babies. It's like
Yes.
that makes you feel like, yeah, I can take anything on. You
Mhm.
feel really strong, and that's like a when you can finally see that, because I don't think you can see it when you're in. I agree that the
Mhm.
newborn phase with our twins was absolutely the hardest, like, transitioning to be a mom of 3 and the sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
And now my twins are toddlers, and
Mhm.
that's challenging in its own ways, but,
Mhm.
like, I've slept,
Yeah.
and I can handle things better that I've slept, like, a solid night.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like when you can see that and you're like, "I'm pretty strong."
Yeah.
That's like a little pat on the back.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Absolutely. Yeah. It's such a journey. One of the things I was trying to think of all the things I wanted to kind of bring up today because there's just so much in the twin parenting experience. And one of the things that we haven't touched on is some of the differences in having fraternal versus identical
Mm,
twins.
mhm.
And I've never had identical twins, so I don't really know what that is like. I can't, oh gosh, there's so many aspects of it that seem so like fascinating and like neat to get to experience. But one thing that I learned is that you know navigating sleep with fraternal twins versus identical twins is so different because with fraternal twins, they are totally uniquely wired individuals and they don't have the same biological clocks. And so I've heard that it can be more difficult to navigate sleep with fraternal twins. And when I heard that, I felt kind of like just like extra validation about like, yeah, this is really
Mhm.
hard, and I'm sure it's so hard with identical twins also, but some of the things with them being kind of like in the same rhythm, I don't know. Um, and I was blown away by how different my kids are from each other. I never pushed gender on my kids, but my daughter loved pink and dresses, and my son was more into, like, vehicles and bad guys, and it's like, "Oh, this is really interesting." Like, they have their own unique interests and personalities, and it's been, like, so cool to see 2 distinct humans, like, alongside each other. Um, but yeah, for you, it's identical twins, so you've gotten a whole other, like, bag of experiences with
Well,
that.
and I think it's so great that, like, even from the get-go, they had different preferences, and
Yeah.
you were able to go with that and nurture both of those different preferences. Like, I know that must have been so hard
Mm.
to do both. You breastfed one and pumped with another, but
Mhm.
you kept doing that because of their preferences.
Yeah.
And you could have been like, "Oh, well, I'm no longer going to breastfeed and I'll just exclusively pump." And
Mhm.
you didn't, because you knew that your daughter liked that. How you were mentioning she liked the cuddles and
Yeah.
she just seemed
And
into
I did
it.
too.
Yes. Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
that's really great that you were able um to really, like, nurture those different preferences.
Yeah.
And, even with identical twins,
Right.
we are trying really hard to notice those different personalities
Mhm.
and make sure that we're not, like, lumping them into
Mhm.
one, which I think with identical can happen also from, like, outside,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
perspectives of other people.
Right.
Um, so it's interesting, like, they've been having a little bit more of, like, a say and an opinion of what they wanna wear. I would say, like, some of their outfits are matching just because that's what we've been gifted, or I'm like, this shirt's cute. I'll get two of it because it's easy.
Yeah.
But we don't always match them. And they have been having a preference of like, I want to wear this shirt and I want to wear this shirt. And it's so
Yeah.
fun to see. I love it to see those like different personalities really coming out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting about the sleep. They my boys slept through the night maybe like 9 or 10 months.
Uh-huh.
We did sleep training with my daughter out of desperation. Like, I
Mhm.
was so in the thick of it. So with
Mhm.
them, it was so different. They
Yeah.
could not go several hours without eating per our
Right.
pediatrician, like, they needed that, extra calories and stuff. But my
Mhm.
son Wyatt, oh man, he loves to sleep. So
Mm.
we were able to kind of figure out, like, if Waylon would wake up a little earlier from a nap, I would go in and sneak him out,
Yeah.
and we would have some time together while Wyatt kept sleeping, but it was minimal, like
Uh-huh.
30 minutes off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it is interesting, like, we had that on a very smaller
Mhm.
scale, but
We really tried to, people said like get them on a schedule, and I do think they learned to be on in a similar rhythm. Some of that was I think our own like pushing it from the outside, but it didn't come easily. I was like, how do you get the schedule to work?
mhm.
Um, so definitely some things just work smoothly. I mean, there's just so many things that can happen in parenting, so many different, so it's such a roll of the dice, what your kids' personalities are going to be, how that interacts with your own personality. And so much of it's just like you got to figure it out as you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the nice thing about having twins, I know we talked about this earlier, like being a perfectionist, is I feel
Hmm.
like with my daughter, I was so type A,
Hmm.
crazy perfectionist. I had a rigid schedule. I would be like, it is 12:02 and be
Uh-huh.
freaking out that we are 2 minutes off schedule. And then I feel
Yeah.
like having twins, I just had to be like, I had to let it go.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really like that you said rhythm because I
Right.
I love like a flexible routine. Like,
Hmm.
we nap around this time, but
Yeah.
if we're out at the park and nap or lunch gets pushed a little bit later, like, I'm not gonna have a panic attack about it, and
Hmm.
that took me having twins
Mm.
to, like, get there because I
Yeah.
was not that way with my daughter.
Hmm.
So, like, I don't know if that was just, like, twins or being a parent the second time, but
Hmm.
I feel like it really yes, like, we have a rhythm,
Yeah.
and it is way more flexible than I was with my daughter,
Yeah.
and I'm thankful for that because I feel like it's allowed me to be, like, a little happier, where with
Hmm.
my daughter, I wasn't
Yeah.
enjoying like, there were several times where I'm like, "This wasn't how motherhood was supposed to be." Like, I had
Hmm.
painted this picture
Oh,
perfect
yeah.
scene,
Mhm.
and that was not what was happening.
Yeah,
So, like, the reality that I was given and then the fantasy that I had pictured were
right.
not lining up, and that was really, really hard
Oh,
for
yeah.
me.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well, and being a first-time mom with twins, I feel like I had to adjust and reorient so quickly, but, like, I
Mhm,
wasn't ready. Like, you can't do there are some things that just take time to
mhm.
integrate, and so I was just in this constant state of, like, internal conflict of, like, I really wanted to do it like this, but I just can't, and, I'm, like, grieving that, but then also just adjusting as I went, and, yeah, it's such a difficult process, but, you find your way through it one way or another, and, yeah, I feel like I'd be a totally different mom to a new baby or twins at this point if I kind of started fresh, but, that's the way it goes. You learn from
Mhm.
your experiences.
Sure, and that's just all
Mhm.
perspective,
Yeah,
and
absolutely, yeah.
yeah. Well, is there anything that we missed or that we didn't cover?
Yes, but nothing that I think I think I've brought up everything that I had kinda had in my mind to bring up for, knowing that we can just scratch the surface, in one podcast episode. But, I know you always ask, what would you wanna say to a twin mom?
Yes.
And, gosh, like, there's so many things, but also it's like you can't know what someone needs to hear because we're all so unique and individual and just, you know I think for me, it was helpful when people assure me that, like, it gets better. It's not, it feels hard because it is hard.
Mhm.
You will sleep again. It's such a um, rough time in the early twin parenting experiences, and just trying to have compassion for yourself. I have compassion for. It was helpful for me to like be in the thick of motherhood and then, like, see other like, I don't judge moms anymore. Like, I used to judge moms before I was
Oh, me too. Same.
one. But, yeah, just, like, you're knowing that you're doing the best that you can, and that's what you can do, and you don't have to be perfect, and y it's okay to not be doing it the way you wanted to, or to feel like you're doing not the best job of it, because it's not, it's something that you can always shift with, and just kind of learning to take care of yourself as you figure out the best way, the best kind of care your own kids need. So
I think that's so big. Like, a big thing that I say now is like, this decision isn't permanent.
yeah,
Like, if we make this decision
right.
right now
Mm-hmm.
and we decide in a month that that isn't working, like,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that,
Necessary sometimes.
right?
Yeah.
Like, just because we made a decision based off of the information we had then doesn't mean we
Yeah.
can change our minds later. And I think that was something that like took me a while
Mm-hmm.
to get. Like, well, in my head, I've always wanted to do it this way. And then it's like, well, that way isn't working. Or even like the way that I parent my 3 kids differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, personalities need
Mm-hmm.
different things. And
Yeah.
I I couldn't have understood that pre-kid.
Right. Yeah. You can only prepare so much for it.
Mhm.
And you're just thrown into it, and you gotta do whatever you can do to get through. But yeah, doesn't mean you can't undo it too.
Right, absolutely. Well, I
Mhm.
also love the, like, reassuring comments, like,
Yeah.
"It's going to get better, this season is hard, but
Mhm.
you're gonna get through it on the other side."
Yeah.
I like hearing those things, especially from other twin moms,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
So, I think I, like, joke I selfishly started this podcast so that I
Mhm.
could talk to other twin moms
Yeah.
and learn from them and all, like, grow together,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I think yeah, that's I love
It's nice
everything
to
you
feel
said.
connected, to feel like you're
Yes.
not in this alone.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. My kid's dad would say, "People do this every day," and I was like, "That's not comforting for me because I feel like I'm losing my mind here." But to know that, yeah, it's not unusual to feel that way.
Sure, and it's
Mhm.
I really wanted to do, like, an interview style podcast and not necessarily, like, only have experts on, which is great, like, I
Mhm.
think the podcasts that do have that, there's a need for that. And I'm
Right?
like, I really
Yeah.
just wanted to talk to twin moms just raw
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
about their experiences in general, which is
Mhm.
why I'm like, and we need to have follow-up episodes with everybody because everything changes. And,
Mhm.
yeah. So I'm like, I would love to do that too. We need to have a follow-up episode
Yeah.
because there's so much more that we can only get into so much
Right.
in an hour.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, I think we did a pretty good job talking about
Yeah.
a little bit of everything. So
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it's helpful for other twin moms out there. Like I
yes.
said, I would have loved to have a little bit more insight, to other twin parents and their experiences. So yeah, thanks for doing this.
Yes, I so appreciate you coming out, and I'm so glad we were able to do it in person. So
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yay! Thank you for taking the time out of your busy twin mom life to listen along. I hope this podcast shed some light on a topic that's been on your heart and gave you more confidence as a twin mama. If you know a twin mom, please send this her way. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Check out the show notes to be connected with today's guest and get discount codes for brands I love. See you next Thursday. Until then, you were made for this.